Cool. Hello. This will be the last hangout this year, I suppose, before Christmas. I have a couple of slides. I thought I could just talk about what's happened since the last hangout, and also what kind of like, there's so many things we can iterate on, but there are some core things we have to do before we kind of get to the next step of talking about release candidates and stuff. I thought I could just summarize some of the points I think is important, and then if you have input on what other things should be in there before we even talk about release candidates, you have a chance to talk about it now. But first, let's look at my slides. Let's see, share screen. All right. So actually, there's not that much that's happened since last time. There's a few bug fixes. Most noticeably is the debugger, because now it works with React Native and Electron, which is super cool. And there's actually also a specific debugger for function tree. So I thought I could demo both of them. Let's see. You see my screen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. OK, so let's fire up React Native first.
How did you connect the debugger to the application?
Yeah, so right now, like, the debugger project is actually really cool because it's a React project, but it deploys or builds to two different targets, where one target is the Chrome extension and the other target is an Electron app.
And the communication is direct or with WebSockets?
Yeah, so the Electron app is for WebSockets.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sweet.
So it's actually super cool, but what happened? Did something bad happen? Yeah, cool. So here you can see the app, and it also has a warning. You have configured remote debugger, but could not connect. Please start a remote debugger, blah, blah, blah. So if I go into my debugger here, I fire it up, and then I refresh. And whoop, there it runs. So if we quickly look at the code, where is it? Here. It's just put something in here. So it's just like an app that is connected to the foo state. So if I go into the debugger and say, whoop, it updates in React Native, which is super cool. And of course, the signals and everything works. Like components here, you can see the app component, but I haven't implemented any signals. But that's kind of cool.
Sweet.
So on the website, there's like, see here, Cerebral GitHub.io install. So on debugger here, we have, yeah, there it is. The standalone debugger. So you have it for Mac, Windows, and Linux, which is super cool. Yeah, and another thing that's also really cool is that when I develop the debugger now, I do it in Electron, because that's on WebSockets, so I can actually fire up some application locally, which talks to the debugger, so I can iterate on design changes and logic with the real application. Previously, I had to simulate signals, and it was just a complete mess. So iterations are a lot faster now, which is good. Yes. So that's React Native. And then we have Node. So what I'm going to do now is, so there's like a second Electron app for only function tree. And the reason it's not inside the Cerebral debugger is because it's different. It doesn't have components and state and stuff like that. And in function tree, it's not guaranteed that things are serializable like it is in Cerebral. So the way we inform the debugger is a little bit different, and just uncertainties on how do you want to debug on Node and environments like that compared to a normal Cerebral app, and how would it even look like? Should it be like a fourth tab? But what if you're not using function tree in Node? Should we don't show the tab? And what if you only do it on Node? Should we not show the Cerebral stuff? And yeah, so to avoid answering those questions until we know some more, I decided to have its own implementation. Yes, so what I thought I could do here is go to function tree debugger, and hopefully it works. I haven't tested, but it should work. So I'll fire up that one, and then I'll fire up our service on the backend. And it reacted, which is nice. So if I go into our local application now, yes, and then I will click something that triggers logic inside Node, like check notifications. So when I click that now, it talked to Firebase, which Node reacted to, and then ran a function tree. And here we see, like, it talked to Firebase. We can see what data was passed into the signal and everything. So I guess if I move along here, and can I do something else? Maybe I can, yeah, let me test this. I create household, and you can see everything happening here. So it's actually really cool that you can debug it the same way like you do in Cerebral. So the question is really just what do you want to kind of like use it for? Like, are there specific things to know that we want to do with the debugger? But currently this is like really helpful because you know at least what's running inside Node. And specifically the payloads here are super awesome to have access to. Because usually you do console logging, and like the terminal is really bad at showing complex objects, but it's no problem here, unless you do some remote debugging with Chrome or something. But yeah, that's the function tree debugger. Kind of cool.
I like it, yes.
Yes, awesome. Let's see. Let's see. I forgot to ask anyone if someone has something they want to show.
I don't think so.
Yeah. So that was at least a couple of demos. Yes. And then it's like what is really important to kind of like feel that we can get to at least talking about release candidates and beta or whatever you want to call it. And I think one of the very important things is just the website, because it's getting kind of complex now, or crowded with menu links, and it's getting pretty difficult to navigate the big pages. So we talked about having a top menu, so kind of like these main headers here, like install, tutorial, in-depth, best practices, migration and API are rather main headers always visible at the top. And then when you hover them or click them, then you see the pages underneath. And when you are on a page, on the left side, you see a table of contents. So there you would see kind of like define state. Oh, bad example. You would see like the architecture, store state, blah, blah, blah. So you could actually click through the table of contents on the left side. I think that's going to help a lot with navigation and just getting an overview of all the stuff. And of course, also search. I have to put search in it. Alexei had a small demo of it. I don't know, what was the blocking? Is it just time?
Yes.
Yeah, it's time. But it looks really, really cool. So when we have this stuff in there, I think the website is in a really good place, and we can always iterate on how it looks and the content, but I think we need that before we can say that it's kind of like ready to invite people in. So that's the website, and then the router needs a review. So we have this, like now the router is like Cerebral2, but technically it can be a module again, and maybe it should be that. But nevertheless, it needs a review in terms of functionality, so it actually works the way we want it to work. And we handle all there are some edge cases. And also, Alexei, I think we talked about how to handle queries.
I think he's gone.
Oh, yeah. Alexei and I talked about how to handle queries. In a really cool way where we used, I don't quite remember the syntax, but it was something like you had kind of like your route, and then you could map, for example, if there's a query called bar, I want to map that to state, for example. Something like that. Or if you wanted to map a query just to the input, you could do that instead. Want it to appear there. So you explicitly say, these queries are interesting for this route, and I want to map them into this state or this input, which I think is really cool.
So that means you write in the state from the URL, basically.
Yeah, but you at least control.
Yeah, you control
what.
Yeah, but then maybe no. Okay, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and it's not been tested or anything. It's just on the idea board or whatever. Yeah.
How would you? Sorry, go ahead.
No, I have this application where I generate music scores, and there's like tons of settings, and I want people to like save just the URL. So I test this extensively. Probably it's nice.
Yeah, cool.
So like yeah.
Sorry.
but just is it a two-way mapping or not? Because that would be really awesome. That like in the UI you change this state and it changes in the URL the query. I mean, it would make sense.
Yeah, and it will be two-way, because when we.
You guys are incredible.
Yeah, because what's kind of cool is since this is like these template tags, it's just awesome because we know the path you want to listen to. So we can just check all the state mutations and the paths. And if one of the paths matches one of the template tags for query mapping, we can just move it back up into the URL.
That's super awesome. Really.
Yeah.
Just you're doing my job. Nothing to do more than perfect.
Did you have some input, Max?
Yeah. How would you deal with root parameters? When you have like a defined root parameter.
Oh, you mean the Oh, where is it? Ooh. You mean the
variables or whatever? Yeah, exactly.
ID like this?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's currently that will just become part of the input.
Would be cool if you could map that as well.
Yeah.
Maybe you could use a parameter that has double dot, like Christian, double dot bar. Yeah. So if it's the same name, maybe it matches, or same name is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Cool. Yeah. So, whoops. That's related to the router. Yeah, and then.
Sorry, I have a question about routing.
Oh,
yeah. At the moment, we're using the router, and we're using these custom hooks for some custom route paths. We're just wondering if that would still work with the new router as well.
I'm not sure what you mean, custom route.
So the router has two hooks. Basically, you've got a toString and a parse function.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can add your own functions to create your own implementation for whatever your app needs. So I'm just wondering if that's still going to work. I hope so.
Yeah. I haven't actually used that, so I'm not sure of the state of it. But we're not making any changes to the router functionality itself. It should work exactly the same way. It's just to ensure that it actually works exactly the same way that we need to do now. And then this query thing that we've been discussing back and forth, because now it's not handled very well, that we want to add. So yes, that should be there. And if it's not, then you have to tell us, because then we've done something wrong.
Christian.
Yeah, the other thing that would be interesting, I don't know if it's possible, would be to add some dynamic route creation.
Yeah.
Christian.
Mm-hmm.
I have missed a bit. Have you showed any notes on router?
No? Notes? Do you have notes?
No, I asked if you show something because I missed a bit.
Oh, sorry. No, I haven't showed anything. I'm just saying that we want to ensure that the router basically works the same way. But I showed, we talked about the query mapping, if you remember, where we used.
Yes, I remember I revisited it today.
Uh-huh.
And I clearly remember it. And it's still the same idea to map signals to roads, but additionally we can define parameters that goes to query.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think I should prepare a presentation in it and to discuss it.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Like we should have a router hangout, and I'll order caps for everyone. So what did you call it, Alexei? Make the Cerebral router great again.
Yes.
So I'll make sure everybody gets those caps before we do it. Oh, but it's going to be really good to nail the router. So we're kind of like happy with how that works. It's certainly been doing its thing this far, and it's really cool to see all the other frameworks and router implementations, and even React router people saying that maybe apps or routes should be passed into the state management instead of the components and stuff like that. So I think we've definitely done the right thing with the router. Cool.
You just need to update it and power with new operator thing.
Yeah.
I think I might have upset the guy, the React router guy, a while back. I responded to one of the release notes to say that they were doing it all wrong, and I think I was a bit harsh.
Yeah, I remember. I even asked one of the contributors to use address bar to recreate his demo. He had this demo with like the Apple Albums application, where he kind of created a route to an album where you kind of like, instead of going to the album page, the album was kind of like highlighted, which is no problem to do with a Cerebral router. And then I asked him, one of the core contributors to React router, to rewrite the demo with address bar. And he was pretty upset. You know, I'm the core contributor to React router. Yeah, it's a bit of politics in this community.
But React Router, I think, came from, at least the concepts came from Cerebral. Not Cerebral, sorry, Ember.
Yeah, Ember, yeah.
Originally. And originally, at the time it came out, it was pretty great, you know, but then you realize it's not, and you can do it better.
Yeah, exactly.
You mentioned that the router needs a review.
Mm-hmm.
In what regards? In the new mapping thing or in general?
Yeah, and Alexei has some ideas on what we can use it, what we can do with it. It's technically it's implemented a little bit differently because of how Cerebral2 works. So it's just to ensure that we're not doing anything wrong, basically. But
so it's a review on a concept level, not on a code level.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a little bit, well, twofold really. One thing is technically review it, but that is something Alexei and I can do, and whoever who wants to look into it. But also conceptually, like if we make some choices and consequences of those technical choices, do people think that's wrong, or will it break their app and stuff like that?
Okay, in general, do you have tickets for all the things we discussed today?
No. I think sorry?
It's that part I said that I should prepare it.
Yeah. So I think Alexei should just wrap up all the thoughts, because he's kind of like the router master. All his ideas and what he wants to have in there before we kind of like make it official, and then everybody gets a chance to comment and discuss the stuff Alexei prepares.
Okay.
Sweet. Yeah, and then Alexei had some ideas on forms, because, and it's a really good point, because now what's really cool about forms now is that we do it based on state, so you kind of like set up the validation rules inside the state tree. But there's a problem, because we're also kind of like creating the validation state inside the state tree manually, instead of deriving validation state. So Alexei suggested that we use computed instead, which basically means that inside the state tree you have a lot less information about each field. You have kind of like only the value and the validation rules, and for example, what the error message to display. But as you move this information out to the component, use a computed in between, which actually gives you the validation values and everything. So it's always derived by changes to the value and the validation rules, instead of manually being updated when you change the value, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. I'm just thinking here, maybe that's a very bad idea, but would it be possible to have things in the state that are actually computed, like Snapdon does, I think, or with their monkey thing? I don't know.
Oh, you mean Baobab?
Baobab, yeah. Like they have some object in the state tree that could be like if the field is valid or not, and you use it like a value, but it's actually a computed behind the scene. So it means that you don't have to worry if the value has been set or is computed at all in the component. You just ignore, just get what is there.
Mm.
It makes something like, yeah, an accessor, basically, yeah.
And this is really difficult. Like, it's very difficult to get all the concepts in. Like we talked about MobX, where Alex and I was kidding a bit, like he had this issue with computed. It was actually a bug, but I told him to use MobX instead of Cerebral, because Cerebral isn't very good at deriving state. We have this computed thing, which works really great, but it's these questions all the time, like, okay, now we have been using computed to produce state specific for the components, but then we also want to use them inside actions. And now we also talk about maybe they should be in the tree. So when we access the values, they will automatically be computed, kind of. And it's just very, very difficult to find a good way to do it. Because with Baobab, we did have computed inside the tree. But there was some issues there. I don't remember what it was. I think it was related to the debugger, maybe.
But an idea would be to use something like an alias. Like you have a value in the state, but actually it's not a value. And so we have to have something in the state that detects, hey, it's not a value. So yeah, that may be a blocker. But once we have this, it just means that when you create the dependency in the connect path, you replace the path with an actual computed. So it's in the connect that you do the logic, and simply you have maybe somewhere, maybe not in the state tree, it could be somewhere you just store, hey, these paths are just alias. They're not in the state tree. They're just indications that this is the component, the computed you have to use. So this means it could be maybe something like we have for operator. So instead of writing the state path as a string, we could write computed and the path. And then we don't know what computed is there, where it's set, how it's managed, but we know it's somehow available. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it would be.
So it's just connect. So it means we don't touch the state tree, but just connect has a way to say, okay, so this is not a path, it's a way to find a computed somewhere, and I don't have to care about, yeah, something like that, or maybe using the template tags.
Yeah.
So that would be interesting, because it would be a way to abstract how the computed is handled. You just use whatever computes the value there. Maybe, I don't know, it's maybe a good, maybe a bad idea.
Yeah,
but it would really help, because computeds are now stored, somewhere in the module, and the component has to have these long imports. And remember that if you move the computed, you have to change the import path. And by doing this, you just have some kind of shortcut, and then it could be very interesting to have that.
Yeah. It's there are some challenges related to passing in props and stuff.
Yeah. But I have some thoughts about computeds as well. And I think what we have now is pretty good, because we make a lot of the apps I'm creating. We make a lot of use of computeds. I mean, basically, we don't fetch any data except via a computed in most cases. And being able to use them dynamically, we're actually passing in computeds into computeds in order to retrieve state. And we've thought maybe about treating, I mean, effectively computeds are a view layer on top of the state, but instead of producing a UI, you're producing more state. And if there was perhaps a way to treat it as a layer of the application rather than rather than accessing state and then passing it into a function. I think there might be some possibilities there, but it has to still be dynamic. You have to still be able to have each caller, each connect function has to be able to define maybe something which is special for its component.
Yeah, and and what would be kind of cool, I think, is to have some examples of what we use computed for. Like there is this general concept, as you explain now, Garth, but like, yeah, it's just.
And we use computers a lot for filtering, for sorting, for doing similar to things to what you just mentioned with the forms. So augmenting states with values which are maybe reused.
Yeah.
So we want to be able to keep that.
Christian.
Yeah.
Have you near somewhere my demo that I sent you? Could you demo it?
Oh yeah,
there is some computed use there, and also some connect use.
Okay. Start. Just 2 seconds. Let's see. Let's see. Let me share my screen again. Yeah, because I just wanted to mention that, like, in the way computed works in MobX is that you basically have a method or a property you define, and you say it's computed, and then you point to some value inside the class. For example, if you want to get the length of something, and that way it makes sense what Gaspard says, like, okay, maybe we want a length state inside our state tree, and that should be a function, and it just automatically generates the value based on when you try to extract it. And I think that makes sense, but I don't know. It feels like other times you don't want it to be in the state tree. You want it to be defined at the component or closer to the component. But it's just been a little bit confusing to me exactly what this concept should be.
Maybe you need more than one place where you can do it, like a default set at the state level, and then a set at the component level where you can override.
Yeah.
But then maybe it gets too complicated then.
Yeah, it's just, I think this is still kind of new, that this deriving state stuff, and do it in a good way. Like MobX doesn't handle it at all in a good way, I think, as a state tree. There's so much extra code and wrapping, and you're kind of like losing the track of what is this state tree. While in Cerebral we do have this nice state tree, but then again, it's.
I think we just need a good section in debugger, which can list some insights on used computers.
Yeah, that's also possible to do. We have a complete overview of the used computers.
But I think what Garth said about computed being an intermediate layer between state and UI, it's kind of interesting because, okay, there's the state where we write values, and then there's the state we actually use in the UI, and this thing can be a bit changed with computed, so it can be augmented with extra values.
Yeah.
And I think if we keep these two things very clear, like it's another layer that can be totally transparent and does nothing, but you can also augment it quite a lot. Mm-hmm. Then for me, it's really nice because it means we can inspect it. We can, like, okay, the filter is working, like you see it in the state, and
and that's maybe iteration after Baobab was that.
I think it's a good.
Yeah, because that was kind of the conclusion after using Baobab. Yeah, actually, when we start talking about, I think we needed, like, because we had Baobab, and then we wanted a different model than Baobab. So we needed a general concept for computing state, and that is why it was extracted into its own layer, so that we could change out the model underneath and still have the same computed concept.
I think the point about Baobab that it worked well, but it wasn't as easy to understand and to maintain as Cerebral was computed.
Yeah, so I think it's a good idea to have it as an explicit concept between the state tree and the components, but that is where things has become a little bit complicated again, because it also needs to be inside the actions, which has caused a couple of other issues.
But you know, like, we have this problem with computing actions where we cannot cache values and we don't really know when to expire them. And having an explicit layer where they are, and I mean, it's obvious that there's no expiring of things, because you can use more computed that are temporary. But like, if you have to, like this example of filtering, I mean, the filter is there. It's like something that will not move. I mean, you always have the filter. Maybe it's just all the values, or they're just sorted, or for these kind of things, having just a small layer that says, oh, I can just sort whatever list I have, or prepare the list for the view, or these things. I mean, it could belong in a special layer for me that the view does not know about. Like, the view receives lists and just manages them.
Let's demo.
Yeah, let's demo. Is there something specifically you want to go into?
You can show from a state tree in debugger for start.
Oh yeah.
And you can see that neither categories, neither tasks is a list, is just UIDs with references. So there is no list, and all lists are calculated with computers. There is some magic there with recursive calls. In fact, it travels categories and tasks to determine what should display it right now. So let's see something.
Isn't it category childs? Yes. Because here you pass in the key of the task. Isn't that correct?
Let's start maybe with categories by parent for now, because it's depends on it. So this computer calculates object where key is category ref, and it contains all childs as a list, as array. So it used later in other computers to iterate on it, or maybe just look up that this category is under another category. So there is nothing hard here. There is only sort that sorts sort categories by timestamp, because there was in task requirement to sort in reverse order, and just collecting all categories using the parent ref property in one map. Unfortunately, we can't explore this in debugger. It would be great to see a result of this computed.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And also what I like about this is that the state tree looks like the data you grabbed from the server. Like we do the same with Firebase. Like all the data we have in Cerebral is mostly direct results from Firebase. And then we bring that state together using Computed for the components that needs them. That just makes it...
Next, Computed.
Category child?
I think categories list also use categories by parent.
Yeah.
Yes. It also depends on task by categories. It's the same way map prepared in the same way. So under category, each category we have a child of tasks that belongs to this category. And since we have infinite nesting with categories, we use this recursive calls as categories. And with reduce, we prepare a list. And also, we can sort out categories that shouldn't be showed because parent category is collapsed. We can see it on somewhere near 25 row. So it checks if it has subcategories, and if it collapsed, we just skipping. So and let's open component called category.
So I just have to laugh. It's crying on the other end as well. There's so much.
They're speaking.
Yeah, they're speaking. Sorry, Alexei.
Let's open component called category panel.
Category panel.
And here we can see that there is a section that just populated with children.
Sorry. Can we maybe somehow lock Christian's screen so we can see the code?
You can do it yourself by clicking square.
Yeah, I did it for the recording as well.
Oh, yeah.
Ah, yeah, great, thanks.
So we can see here sections that populated with just the children, and let's scroll down to connect. And here is we have categories list. It's our computed that we've seen previously, and we have a selected category as a state pass from our model state tree. You can see I have used here a technique to export strings of passes. So model in fact exports selected category pass, and I use short form here. So second object is our signal mapped. It also just a string. And the third parameter that was introduced recently into Connect is a merge props function that almost the same as an analog from React Redux merge props, and it's populated with our state already resolved from state tree. It's populated with bound signals, and there is a third parameter is own props. So it's props passed to component wrapped with connect, but we don't use it here. And also we see here that we this wrapping prepares children and category list just populated here a simple array. And in fact, it is rendered as array, not a tree. So it's a tree only in a state. We have just reference to each category, just have reference to its parent. And all stuff done with computers. Also, we calculate some additional properties that we pass to categories, like level, and has sub items to display toggle to collapse. And we also pass a selected property to indicate if our item key is the same as selected category is in state 3. Oh. Each time you click, you can show how you click on collapse buttons.
Just a question, you separate the signals from the props in your connect function? Yeah, you have two destructuring things, 2 parameters. Is that new? Just like 32.
First 2 was always. First one is our state mappings.
Yes.
Second one is signal mappings.
Yes, but then in the function call you have 2.
And third one is a merge props sync.
Yes, but you have 2 arguments in this render function.
In fact, it can accept 3 arguments. Okay. Third is own props.
Okay.
We can see, Christian, could you open a category?
Okay, but that's okay. There's nothing to do with connect.
So category is a bit mess because it has at least 3 states, but we can see the same merge props function here, and it use that props that was passed on category, like selected, level, and has sub items.
Okay.
And it used to prepare some bound some callbacks. You can see that I prefer not to pass plain signals to view component. View component operates with basic on-click, on-collapse toggle, and all business logic, including signal names, are hidden in connect wrapper.
Is there documentation for this?
I think we'll prepare it soon. It must be documented, but it's completely the same as React Redux 1.
Okay. But because I looked on the website and I didn't see anything.
Yeah, we must document it.
Okay. Okay. So I think it's interesting to not have signal names. I'm always struggling with names there, and they're not typed, so it's just hard to make, to not break them.
So in fact, this merge props function completely overrides props that pass to your wrapped component, and you decide what receives wrapped component.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It doesn't assign new or overrides over. It returns completely same, completely only that would be passed to component.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting because I had quite a few bugs related to this.
Goes first in your demo, in your map. In fact, on props is first, and then it is overridden with state prop. Not here. That's right. This right, but here in object on props goes first.
It's the first line. Okay.
So it's default. How works connect? It just use your own props, then add state props, and also add signal props. So by default, if you don't use merge props, your component receives such props.
Okay.
But you are able to define, and it's very useful. Also very useful not to completely abstract your own components, but if you use some library or some existing components, it's very easy to map, to connect to Cerebral any existing component using just connect without wrapping with another extra component. Even
So that's probably the main use case, is to make it easier to connect outside components, because otherwise you could always just do it where the cursor is right now.
Yes, but I like it to use in my own code as well. So my own components are completely abstracted from Cerebral, and I can easily test it and move it.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I have a use case like this where, for example, input in forms have to have different signals if it's like a client or project or whatever. So you could wrap that in the upper part and then reuse exactly the same UI. It's nice. Yeah. Thanks. Sorry for that. Yeah.
and there is one cool demo here. It's deleting a bunch of tree. It also use computed, and it's very powerful, I think. When you click,
So will the merge also work in computed as well?
could you repeat?
The merge function that you've added in there, I assume that would also work in computed functions as well.
Computed functions passed as just as state references. In first,
Yeah, but the computed functions themselves are defined as retrieving state, and you may want to merge the passed-in props and the state in the same way.
First argument to connect is also could be a function that receive on props. Christian, could you show us? First argument on connect, to transform it to...
I think Christian is doing what Garth was asking about, because I think it's not about how to use computed within the merge function, but rather use a merge function when defining a computed, isn't it?
Exactly.
I think we don't have such merge props for computed.
This is the problem. We had cases where this caused us a problem that we couldn't define the order in which the different layers were overriding each other,
But
and sometimes
computed receives not order, but I think it receives an object. Or you mean something else?
if you pass into a component a prop, and the state returns a value with the same name, then that will actually get lost. Actually, the prop will override rather than the state in the current system. And it's the same for computed and components. So you can lose data that way without realizing where it's going.
Yeah, globally, it makes really sense to just have exactly the same API for connect and computed, I think. I mean, except for signals, just, yeah.
Yeah,
I just can see I have implemented pretty complex computed, and I haven't found need for such merge thing.
Yeah, you need it when you decide whether you want the computed value returned to be from state or from the props.
I think I see
It's the same use case.
So, like in Christian example, computer defines foo. Oh, he just added an on props, and I think it's wasn't ideal. Christian, could you comment it? So, is it just suggestion?
I think this would be essential, and it might be nice. I mean, I know that it's already done here, but if the order of props were the same, so it was state, own, and signal, or and I'm not sure which way around makes sense, but so it's always the same.
Yeah, it makes sense. So we can power computed with such thing too.
Or to use destructuring like it's used elsewhere. And then the order is not important.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
No. I like more arguments, not destructuring here. It should be just the same.
Why?
I think it makes sense to have arguments because you have to list them in this order in the connect. Like you have first the state, then the signal, while the own props are just thrown in. So for me, it's okay to have also that in.
And also it's a limited list, so I don't see a reason for object here. Yes, that's better. Oh yeah, we can make this too. It looks interesting.
Or if you put props first, then it always works.
What?
Yeah, I think putting own props as the first argument makes a lot of sense.
Own props shouldn't go first. We have tried first with connect, but you rarely pass own props to wrapped components, and it's really would be rare to have just underscore as first argument, just to omit it, because you don't have it. So, and it's really mimics React Redux, and I think they have experience why they put in this order. I really like current order, and own props should go last.
Up to you.
No, I agree. I think own props is not the thing you use most inside the component.
It's additional function. It's additional props when you want to override, so it goes last. Yeah.
It's okay for me.
And what exactly speaks against using named or like using destructuring? Where order doesn't matter anymore? Would it be too cumbersome to use, or?
I don't see a reason to make a destructuring when we have just two arguments, and we definitely will not have any more. Just state props and own props, and you can name it any way you like, and use destructuring for state props itself to extract, yes, like this. So I see how it looks like this one. It looks interesting, but at root, there's completely no reason to have destructuring. Just two arguments looks good.
All right.
Yeah, an order of arguments is not hard to remember because you actually have them in the connect thing. So you have to remember that state goes first, signals go second. This already.
Default things. Own props is additional thing. It's override.
Just own props goes last. That's the only thing to remember here. So I mean, you don't have to remember the names, or if it's props with a P.
You can call it how you like.
I think it makes sense. Yeah, for me it's okay. It's good like that. I mean, I agree. Not so important anyway.
Yeah, it's just freaking details.
Yeah.
But it's true, you could use destructuring on either of the arguments being passed, which is probably more convenient than
it seems like a good argument, and I don't like to have to remember the name of things inside structures when I don't create the names myself. So here, I mean, if it would like, if it could become huge, then yeah, of course, but it's not going to change. And, you know, it's one less thing to remember. Is it state prop? You know, I don't know.
Or just say, yeah, true.
Okay.
You could add an extra one for computed props.
No one wants to comment that.
What's this for? Do we need it?
No, it's this abstraction layer should definitely not go here. If we have a computed abstraction layer, it's not in the component, or it doesn't make sense at all, I think. Okay, nice.
Christian, it's very good that you have added this alert, but most of chat users doesn't know about connect merge props. You should advertise it too.
They know it now.
You should document it well on website. Now it proved to be great.
Everyone's probably watching the live stream right now, so.
I have this question for Christian or anyone who's been using Firebase, because I changed the way these promise work for some of the actions. Has anyone used them actually? Because it's like a pretty bold change to, you know, because their own promise thing had issues. Has anyone tested it, or? You're muted, Christian, I think.
Oh, have I been muted? Oh, sorry. What I was saying was about the computer. I'll just create the issue, and then if anyone has any comments on it, we should finish the discussion there instead. But yeah, we've been using, because this is in Firebase now, right? These changes?
Yes, they are.
Yeah,
but not for all actions. I rewrote most of them, but not everything.
Yeah, but we're using everything, and everything's working just fine.
Okay, so we should continue refactoring to have to replace all these special promises with native ones, so that the catch works. Because that was
I think
right.
Yeah, I think that's wise.
So maybe can we add an issue somewhere, or so that we don't forget to fix this?
Yeah, I can. I have my issue list here.
Yeah, I saw that. So maybe just add one. Yeah, I was a bit worried that I had broken everyone's Firebase thing.
Oh no,
it's okay.
It's okay. I just have one small. I have to go. You see. Yeah, just the last point there is that we're working on a course. So, like, the introduction to Cerebral2 was very simple. But now I'm working on a pretty huge course, and I'm writing a script, and I actually asked Brian to be the voice of the course. And I thought I could just share the, let's see, releases or general randomness course manuscript. Work in progress. Yeah, so I'll be writing the manuscript and actually make a recording for people to review and comment on the course, and then Brian will actually read the official text, because his English is pretty good. And then I'll release it as like a like you have multiple videos, you can choose which one to look at, and like a normal course. And I think it's
Brian, if you need someone to just check the sound, like you know, de-essing and stuff like that, to make sure that everything sounds good, I can
awesome.
just check that. Yeah, I have everything for that.
That's awesome. So yeah, because through Christmas now, I hope to finish the manuscript at least, and then right after New Year's, I'll start recording the kind of like prototype courses, so people can review and make comments, and then yeah, we should get you and Brian together to make sure that the sound is good.
Yeah, just you know, EQ and simple things like that can make really the sound nice. Yeah.
Sweet. That's awesome. Great. I have to go.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I extracted collections from the demo. I mean, this work about saying, hey, I have got a bunch of stuff and I have lists and forms and whatever. So I'm creating some kind of small project so that I can easily reuse it. Mm-hmm. And yeah, just a note for those interested in watching what's happening with this.
Sweet. And I also got some ideas related to computed, as like how can we show it to the debugger? Maybe it shouldn't be as decoupled as it is now, like you have to reference the function kind of thing, and like the idea of just defining some computeds and you can just use them anywhere.
I think I have exactly the same in my mind.
Yeah.
It's all about accessing the computed functions, because now they're all over the place, and if you have a central place to define them, then the debugger would know about them, and you can like use one of those tag functions as just suggested, and then just pull them in. And yeah, I think it's a lot nicer that way than just importing it all over the place.
Yeah, I totally agree. So
I don't think it should be defined anywhere in the model, to be honest.
Yeah, it's long. There's been so many iterations, and it just my stomach says that's going back to what we went away from with Baobab.
What if we could define computeds in Connect as a stack, and then we could do a bunch of things with that then?
As a stack in what way?
So that you could chain them together. So the base computed is the state, and then on top you have a different layer on top for each different layer. Maybe I have to make a concept. But, the idea is that at the base you've got plain state, and then on top of that you've got a layer, an optional layer of one computed, and then you can have another one on top and so on.
But that's very much like Redux then, no? And it starts to get very complicated to understand how things are. I mean, I think having just a computed layer, a single one, no matter how complex the calculation of it is, I would prefer that. Like, just there's one layer. That then it's easy to view it.
But the specific use case I'm thinking of is where, for example, first of all, you have an object you receive from your backend, which you store in your state, and then you augment that with some local state via a computed, and then when you have a list of those, then you would sort them. So you have multiple layers there, each of which can be cached. If you have it in one computed, then you have to recalculate the whole thing every time something changes, rather than just the layer that's affected.
Mm-hmm.
There is also a problem with storing derived or computable data in state. You can easily get an inconsistent state. So it's pretty easy to get a consistent
you should never
state.
Store it.
Yeah, it shouldn't store at all. That's why I started a discussion on forms, because we really store computed data. Validation result is definitely just calculation.
Yeah,
And
I understand. No, sorry.
another thing that comes to mind when you use the layer approach, I don't think you could reference or use another computed within a computed layer anymore, could you?
But if it's a stack, then you just read the data from the layer below it. You don't need to reference another computer. You just always reference
You
states.
just put it in a
those
higher.
are.
You just put it in a higher level in the stack. You just yeah.
I think it's a very nice way to think about state mesh transforming and preparing for UI, and it could be great that we can see this in a debugger. So the idea of layers is really nice in a way.
Yeah, I like it too. It's a bit like Docker layers.
Yeah, it has to be very easy to view somehow, like what layer talks to what layer, because otherwise it's very confusing.
Yeah, and I think it's a good way to think of it, like outside in. Ja, jeg kommer snart. Sorry, it's.
Yeah, it's time.
I understood that.
Yeah, and you can like visualize it in the debugger first, like how should it look in the debugger, and then you think about, because that is where you understand it, and then you think about how do we implement this to make it look like this in the debugger. It's kind of weird perspective on it, but I think it's really cool, because that's kind of like how the signals came about. It was how they want to read this in the debugger, and then it was implemented.
And I think it should be really linked to state, because state is just the layer 0 of this thing. So it doesn't have to be a special case, the state. So I think it's like a new way to view state, right? As layers.
Just have to think over how it feels in a few days.
Just think about it. Just post an issue somewhere. I think everyone's got some ideas.
Yeah.
We just throw it in there.
Yeah. I think that's a good idea. We need some iterations on this, but I think we're onto something for sure. But sorry, I have to go. Thanks a lot for attending, guys, and have a great Christmas and a happy New Year's celebration.
You too. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Keep growing.
Yeah. Bye bye.
Happy New Year. Bye.
Bye.